Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Multifamily Unplugged. Certainly, I'm glad that you are here. And if you were invited by somebody, make sure that you thank them for that. Remember, grab your coffee, buckle up for this morning's episode because we're here for a good run. We're going to do something a little bit different. We have my guest today. We're going to talk about self-storage, raising capital, what the market is like right now. But before we get into that, one thing I always like to talk to you about is what are you being intentional about, your intentionality, and are you starting your day, your week, as we're coming up on the end of 2025 here. You start to kind of maybe reflect a little bit on what you've gotten accomplished this year, the goals that you set early in the year. How did you do this year? Have you pivoted or shifted in any way in your business? And what is 2026 going to be looking like? Remember, I always do a goal setting and business planning session that we do. Typically, we do it at the beginning of the year. This year, we're going to be doing it in December, kind of trying to get a jump start, a little more of a jump start on 2026. So start thinking about your goals, start thinking about what you want to accomplish, because it's in the intentionality that we get the activity really up and running and go to where we want to go. So let me take a minute here. My guest this morning is going to be Steffany Boldrini. She's with Monte, Carlo Real Estate Investments, and we're going to talk about self-storage. So let me bring Steffany in. Morning. Welcome back
morning,
again.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great as well. Thank you.
Good, good. How's business these days?
Well, I think right now is a fantastic time to buy because prices are dropping because of cap rates are going up, as we all know. And as my mentor always say, only dead fish goes with the flow. So you do not want to be buying in a hot market. You actually are much better off, in my opinion, to be buying in a market that is slow. So you can not only get a discount, but you can be prepared and you'll get more equity, right, by the time that cap rates start to compress again.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we're going to get into that a little bit more as we talk this morning and unpack some of that. Steffany, I always start my program asking that one question, right? And that is, in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Organized.
Organized.
Yes.
Have you always been organized?
I have. Living in a one bedroom sharing a one bedroom with two other sisters, you have to be very tidy. You only have a small corner.
Yeah, so I guess three people in one room would kind of push you in that direction, even
Yes,
if you didn't want to be, right?
exactly.
How does that show up? How's that show up in your business and your life today?
That's a great question. I think when not only you're organized in your personal life, your home is organized, you are able to clearly think. You're not in the middle of a mess and your mind is not cluttered because of what you see. Although I know a few people that are successful and they're messy. So I think it's just a matter of organizing your schedule, organizing your properties, organizing your SOPs, and your tasks are really important for growth and expansion of your portfolio.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned about being tidy and that, I would, whenever I was hiring an assistant, today it's a little bit different, right? Because we use VAs for our business and, you kind of get a feel for them through the interview process, but then after a couple of weeks of working with them. But when I was in an office and I had a full staff and I would bring people or hire people to work for me, I always, after the interview, would walk them to their car.
Yeah.
And there was always a sense, right? You'd walk them to their car. If their car was dirty, if it was full of fast food wrappers and junk all over, you kind of knew that's how they would probably keep their desk. And if you were somebody, like in my case, I'm super organized like that too. If you were somebody who your inside of your car was just shuttered, that was an immediate "I'm not hiring you" decision, So
Yeah. That is
just
so
because you could,
true.
yeah, you could kind of tell. But hey, listen, let's unpack a little bit about what mentioned this morning. And cap rates are definitely starting to expand, right, and open up a little bit more, and pricing is coming down as a result of that.
Mhm.
In your opinion, what do you think the cause of that cap rate expansion right now is?
I think is interest rate, and I think that some people are hurting, in my opinion. We syndicated actually a small multifamily in Dallas, and the rents are actually going down a bit because people are moving in with family members, they're moving in with friends, they're downsizing, they're moving in with other people in order to save money. I think some people are at their limit as far
Yeah.
as inflation and things like that. So I think it's a combination of both, but just like everything else, it's a cycle. And whenever we are in either a down cycle or an up cycle, we never think it's human nature to never think you're going to get out of it. But you have to step out and understand that these are all cycles and they have happened and will continue to happen. And you just have to take advantage of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, And what's interesting is you said that you syndicated a small multifamily in Dallas. Now you're in the self-storage business, but you do diversify a little bit, it sounds like.
Yes, because I partnered up with a dear friend of mine who has been syndicating deals for a while, and he does all kinds of syndications in all types of asset classes. So that was a deal that I did with him.
Nice. And how's
Yes.
that been going?
It's a condo conversion, actually, which we were going to start exiting this year, a year after purchase. But because of the market, it's not supporting the prices that were there when we purchased the property for sale.
Mm.
We're holding off for another year.
So you guys took a multifamily and you did a condo conversion on it, did all the condo docs, and got ready to start selling them individually?
Yes, it was actually built as a condo, so they already had the HOA. We have to reinstate it when we start selling. So it was very straightforward already.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I remember back in the 90s when the condo conversion market was so huge and everybody was buying large apartment complexes and converting to condos, and people were actually really accelerating. It put 10x to shame, really, because of
Mhm.
the profitability, and then all of a sudden that market just went sideways, and I always say there's no geniuses, right? It's only market cycles. And if you catch it at the right time, you do well. And there's no doubt that we're going into that cycle. Why don't you do this? Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are, your background, and how you got into doing what you're doing today?
Sure. I am originally from Brazil and was in tech sales for my entire career. And over the last 7 years, I moved into real estate investing full time because I had a friend at the time that was an investor in retail real estate, and it made so much more sense uh, to be a real estate investor versus what I was doing at the time, which was angel investing on the side for fun. Turns out I lost all of the angel investments that I made, and I've gained from my worst real estate investment that I've ever done in my life. So real estate is a fantastic form of investment.
Absolutely. Um, talk about that. deal that you say was your worst real estate deal, but you profited so well from it?
Yeah, it was, I started in real estate when things were absolutely insane. It was really hard to find a deal, and I didn't know that I could mail letters out to buyers. So I was literally looking on Crexy, and I could not find a storage property that made sense. And then I came across a storage that came with 3 self-serve car washes. And I thought, oh, how hard could it be, managing a brand new asset class that I know nothing about? Never met anyone that does that. Never even asked anyone. Never went to a conference, car wash conference. Anyway, it turns out that after a couple of years, things were really, really bad. I couldn't find a good employee. There was a lot of theft, a lot of break-ins, problems with car washes compound over time. If you don't fix them, they just exponentially grow and get worse. So I decided to completely close them, and I sold the last couple of them literally 5 years later after purchasing, and ended up making money, which is insane, after closing them for 2 years and having a really hard time managing them before that. So real estate is an amazing form, especially portfolio properties in this case, right? You can just split the properties that you purchased and sell them one at a time. I think that was another reason why I ended up making money. So yeah, buy right and potentially buy a portfolio and take it from there.
Hey, I have to ask about that car wash. So you closed down the car washes, and 2 years later or 5 years later, you sold them, and you
Yes.
made money on the sale after
Yes,
they were closed and not even producing.
exactly.
Did you catch, because it seems like in the last few years, there's been a boom on car washes. And
Mm-hmm.
did you just catch it at the right time that there was an operator who wanted the equipment and the location, or?
Oh, what was it? I think buying right was during COVID. I negotiated a better price to begin with. It was also a portfolio, so I was able to split, into different properties and sell one at a time. So I think it was a bunch of different reasons that led to that. But at the end of the day, even if you break even, right, that's still not a bad investment because you learn so much from that. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's why
yeah,
I love real
totally.
estate.
I
It's
love
hard
what
to
you,
lose money in real estate. You really have to screw it up.
yeah, you do, right? Hey, I love what you said about, you thought it'd be easy to go in an asset class you knew nothing about, and I always tell the story. I say, I spent 15 years selling residential real estate. I went in the apartment business thinking this can't be any different. It'll be the same.
Right?
And as soon as somebody said NOI or cap rate or yield maintenance, I was like, what? What does that mean? So you have to re-educate yourself, and you have to learn. It's almost like you go back to school, right? I always
Yeah.
tell I always tell people, I say, hey, if you're going to go in and do something that you don't know anything about, no matter who you are or what you do, go get a coach. And you mentioned mentor at the beginning. Talk about that a little bit. Talk about your mentor and your relationship with them. And
So my mentor, I was actually dating him. He was my boyfriend at the time. And as soon as I learned that real estate is a really great form of investment, I started asking him a lot of questions, taking notes, reading all of his leases, and took 30 pages worth of notes. And that is how it happened. And when we broke up, I decided to go to the Real Estate Guys Summit at Sea because I knew I needed to meet more people, uh, you know, for whatever problem I'm sure I would have. You need to build
Right.
your network. So that is how I got started. But I didn't do that for the car washes. And lesson learned, go to a conference, meet people before you invest in any asset class.
So, what excites you about self storage over multifamily or car washes for that matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I was learning on my real estate journey, I heard on a podcast that self-storage does well in both good and bad economic times. And I said, that's the asset class I want to be in. Not a lot of moving parts, no toilets, no tenants, no trash, and a lot, a lot different than multifamily.
Yeah. I think a lot of people's experience with self-storage is storage wars
Yeah.
on cable TV, right? Do you ever get to participate in any of those or find any good stuff after tenants don't come back?
No, it's all junk. It's either Christmas ornaments or junk or family items that are old and nobody wants to get rid of. Is literally nothing good.
I funny story. I was at a self-storage facility this past week, and I was looking. There was somebody that was at their storage shed, and I looked, and they had all this stuff like out in front, and when you looked inside, it was packed. I mean, from the front to the back to the ceiling. I was like, what could you possibly have in there? It just kind of funny.
Yeah.
How does self-storage compare when you're underwriting and looking at the financials and the fundamentals behind it? How's it compare to multifamily? Most of our listeners aren't multifamily people, and self-storage is in the space. How does it compare? What do you look at that would either be the same or even differently?
Yeah, it's pretty much all the same. Basic math, income, expenses. Can you increase income? Can you reduce expenses? Can you expand? Does it come with land that you can build more storage or put some containers there? And so you have to look at your competitors, of course, around that radius. Are they full? Are they not? Can you raise rents? Is there room in the existing tenant roster that you could raise your rents without scaring off a lot of people? So very, very similar to all asset classes.
Yeah. I've always heard that. And, I think I've always had my blinders on, right? I've been a multifamily market rate rent investor. And, but when you look in multifamily as an asset class, there's so many different product types in that bucket.
Yeah.
You've got tax credit deals and senior housing and medical housing and RV parks
Low
and mobile
income.
homes.
Yep.
And now, self-storage. And then, what I've always liked is market rate rent, because I can go in and typically raise my rents, do some improvements, force appreciation. And can you do those same fundamentals with self-storage in that same way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the same exact way of underwriting. Look for opportunities to, again, increase rent, decrease costs. Can you add tenant protection because we get a certain percentage from the tenant protection company. So there are also, like you were saying, all kinds of subclasses of storage, right? There's boat and RV, there's parking for cars, there's small, and some people put that in small industrial. So there's some business owners that like large units as well. So there's so many classes within the storage asset class that you can also focus on, and a lot of people do.
Yeah. And how about in today's economic environment and where we're at? How does self-storage hold up, right? Is there a time in the cycle it's better, or a time in the cycle it's not quite, you shouldn't be in it?
So what happened during COVID, when everyone started moving, storage, people were able to raise rents significantly, and that has not held right now. So if you were underwriting for 3 to 5% rent increase, like after COVID price increases, Those properties are not doing that well. But if you were steady and you kept, if you were responsible, right? It's just like any other asset class. If you're a responsible investor with a great loan to value in a good market that makes sense, and you have upside without counting on rent growth, then you're fine. So a lot of people don't account for a potential 10% decrease. So that, in my opinion, is very important, because that's how a lot of people in multifamily are in trouble right now, because they were buying at very, very compressed cap rates and on bridge loans. And when those bridge loans disappeared, right, they got in trouble.
Yeah.
So you just have to be responsible.
So it sounds like fundamentally financing is very similar. Do you find it easier or harder to get a self-storage loan over a multifamily loan?
So when I'd say 30 years ago, banks were not really open to lending in for storage, but now they understand the model is proven. They completely understand that is a very solid asset class to lend on, and so most banks will lend on storage. It's probably easier to get a loan for multifamily, but it's really not that hard if you get a good broker that knows all the lenders out there. That really helps. And there are some SBA loans you can get as well.
For self-storage. Interesting. Yeah. Where you can't get an SBA. Well, I guess there are small business loans that Freddie does, but true SBA, isn't available in the multifamily space, which is interesting.
Yeah, and we don't have, I believe, Fannie loans either, right? But you guys have that.
Right.
Fannie and Freddie, yeah. We don't have that.
So you can't do agency debt. It's all straight bank debt on self-storage.
Or SBA.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I guess self-storage would be considered more of a business.
Yes, exactly.
Where multifamily, I look at multifamily as a business, right? In most cases, it's a broken business that you're buying and you're reinventing it, right? Where self-storage, they probably look at it more as that retail type of business.
Yeah, I think retail, once you're fully leased, it's a very easy asset class, or easier, right? All asset classes have their pros and cons. Retail, these leases can take 2 years to negotiate. Then you need to, bring in tenant improvements, money for them. But if you're truly comparing with retail, storage, in my opinion, is more of a business. Multifamily is actually more of a business because more hands-on, right? It requires daily management. But retail and office, you get a tenant and they just mail you the check, to put it simply.
So what about markets? I'm a huge market-driven investor when it comes to multifamily. The fundamentals have to be there, from population growth and job growth and employment diversification. Well, how about self-storage? Do those line up the same, or are they different?
Well, you and I live in California.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
So I like California because it's very hard to get things permitted and approved. So if the numbers make sense, California can make sense. I don't know about multifamily. Probably not, because of all the regulations against landlords. So if it makes sense for construction in California, or an existing facility where the numbers make sense, I like it because it's very hard to get something permitted. So you're not going to have a lot of competition. I'm just speaking very generally. And I also focus on red states that have good insurance today. So Florida and Texas are out of my list after their rates have been, doubling, tripling, quadrupling in some situations. So I love North Carolina. The taxes there are very affordable, great insurance, great pro-business state, and some other red states.
So I find that interesting about insurance in North Carolina because, hurricanes. So North Carolina is affected by hurricanes, as Florida is, anything on the East Coast there. But you're saying that insurance is more is easier and less expensive in North Carolina than in Florida?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing to me. Why do you think that is?
I didn't know they were affected by hurricanes. I know that they had some issues last year or a year before that, but I was not. I'm not sure if they're really affected that much.
Yeah. Well, I have a good friend who lives in Wilmington, and actually one of my coaching clients is in Wilmington also. And, boy, this year's been a great year for hurricanes. We have not, had any problems. Our Florida properties have held up really well this year. We haven't been battered. But I know years past, there's been a number of those hurricanes that, hit up in that South Carolina, North Carolina coastline.
Mm-hmm.
You must be further out, like Raleigh, Greensboro.
Yeah, I'm further out there. Yes.
Yeah.
Near Cary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you're inland, you're not as affected by those insurance costs. Like I can underwrite in the Midwest at $950 a door, where in Florida I have to underwrite at $2,200 a door.
Wow.
Makes a big difference.
Wow, that is a huge difference.
Yeah. So, what are you working on these days?
I'm actually working on analyzing the multitude of self-storage facilities that are for sale right now. There is a lot of opportunities right now, and I would love to get a couple in contract this coming month, and also start our first development in California that we got fully entitled a few months ago, but we're finally ready to start raising the funds for that.
Nice. Good for you. Good for you. And that'll be a brand new development, climate controlled?
Yeah, mostly climate, yes.
Yeah. And then when you develop like that, what's your exit plan?
I love buy and holding real estate. I believe that, I know that the greatest, wealthiest people in real estate are mostly buy and hold people. However, when you're syndicating a deal, sometimes you have to flip. So that is still TBD. I would love to hold that property, but it'll depend on if we can find a couple of investors that want to take the entire deal and they also want to hold forever in parentheses, in quotes. So yes, that's still TBD, but I would love to buy and hold.
Yeah, boy, there's a lot to be said for long-term hold. Especially when you're looking for cash flow later, because as you squeeze out all the debt and your equity increases, you have that bigger cash flow that now it's funding your lifestyle, right?
Yeah. Or you can cash out, right? You can take some money out of that property and buy another one. You don't need to sell to take money out of the property. You can get another loan, take some money out, keep your loan to value still, safe LTV. But that's another way of investing. You don't need to pay taxes when you cash out.
I had somebody on my podcast a couple months back, and he had written a book about how to create wealth in real estate. And I'm sorry, but I don't remember the name of the book. But what he talked about was he still owns the first three assets he ever bought. They were all residential investments. He still owns those. He has refinanced between the three of them 13 times over the last 30 years.
Wow.
And he said he's made more money on the refinances than what what the houses are worth today. It's that cash out. Plus,
that's a great way to explain that, Mike. That is a really good way to explain that.
Yeah, I hope
the home multiplied in value multiple times over time versus selling it once, right?
Right, because every market cycle you have because property goes up in value, that market cycle hits, you
Yeah.
have the ability to refinance, pull cash out. Now you're pulling cash out tax free
Yeah.
because you're not selling. So there's no gain there. You're pulling your cash out tax free, and you are able to ride it again for the next cycle while collecting cash flow.
Yep.
So it's interesting. I think in real estate in general, there's a lot of tools and a lot of systems that you can employ that will benefit you not only short term but long term.
Yes, that is, the best way that I've heard that strategy explained.
Well, Steffany, I appreciate you being here today. Thank you again. I know we've had some technical issues along the way today, last time, and this time I think we got it pretty well wrapped up. Why don't you tell people how they get a hold of you if they're interested in self-storage, maybe taking a look at private investment with you? How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is montecarlorei.com. And if you'd like to be part of our mailing list /investors, or subscribe on top of our page, and we can get in touch and have a conversation and discuss your goals.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. Hey, everybody, thank you. Have a great week. Remember, like us, love us, subscribe, and we will see everybody next week.